Thanks for joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert Avalanche Report. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Alex Lainert, and joining me is the Deputy Director of the Colorado Avalanche Information Center, Brian Lazar. All right, Brian, we have got a busy, snowy weekend for the high country. What are you guys watching at the CAIC this weekend?
Yeah, it is really good to see a return of winter weather. That April weather in the beginning of February was a little unsettling for everybody. We had a really dry, January and February up to this point. So it is great to see a return of some really healthy snowfall starting on Thursday night. The downside of the return of the snowfalls is coming really fast and furious. We're going to get a lot of snow in a really short time frame, and that means a very dramatic rise in avalanche danger as we head into the holiday weekend. That has us particularly worried. If we look at avalanche fatalities over the state of Colorado over the last 20 years, you can see that February has been the most deadly month for fatal avalanche accidents. And if we zoom in even further, these several days right around the Valentine's Day and President's Day weekend are the most deadly days within the most deadly month. And so we are right now entering that most deadly several days of the year over the last 20 years, right as a potent winter storm is arriving on our doorstep. So that has us a little bit worried. We want to highlight that avalanche conditions are going to be really dangerous, and we really need to change our mindset about how we've been approaching avalanche terrain over the last several weeks. And just as a precursor of what's to come, these are avalanches which ran just over the last several days, just from little bits of snow. These are in areas that picked up maybe 6 or 8 inches of snow with a bunch of wind. And you can see how these avalanches are breaking. Fairly wide, fairly deep, and they're running pretty good distances. And this is just a precursor of what's to come. These types of avalanches are only going to become more widespread. You're going to see them on many more slopes. They're going to also grow larger as we add more snow volume on top. These problematic slopes, like the one depicted in this image, these steep convex slopes with a lot of shallow rocky areas and have been heavily wind loaded, will remain the most dangerous as we move through the weekend, but the number of dangerous slopes will expand. And so here's some avalanches that have just run over the last 24 to 36 hours. And again, this is just from about 6 inches of snow and some wind. So we can treat this as a canary in the coal mine. You can see some of these are breaking quite deep and breaking quite large, and conditions will only get worse as we pile more and more snow on top of these buried wheat layers.
You mentioned that we are entering into historically the deadliest weekend, the deadliest time frame of the deadliest month. Is that because of the fact that this time of year it is, we see a lot of these same conditions? We get these fluctuations in temperatures, we get these big snow events, the slabs are just weaker? Or is that aided in the fact that it's a very busy weekend by the long weekend that the high country is going to see?
Yeah, I think you touched on both of the key components to that answer. And the one is that, by the time we get to mid-February, we have, we're well into our season, which means we have enough snowpack volume on the ground to typically produce avalanches large enough to be a threat to people, bury or kill or injure people. And then two, it coincides with the holiday weekend. So this holiday weekend in the middle of February is when a lot of people like to recreate in the mountains because we have a more developed snowpack. And so the combination of more snow volume on the ground with more people interacting with avalanche terrain over a holiday weekend is what often will drive this confluence of avalanche accidents during these periods. These are the kinds of avalanches that we're really worried about people triggering. You can see these are some, from kind of near Tin Cup Pass, and these are breaking, pretty deep and wide. And again, like I said, as we have this atmospheric river event push into the state, you can see these dark blue colors are areas of very deep moisture coming out from the Pacific, slamming into the California coast on Thursday morning. But by the time we get to Thursday night, a lot of this moisture is going to make it to Colorado, which you can see here in the white box. And how that translates to snowfall is quite impressive. You can see that the snowfall starts on Thursday night. By Friday morning, we've got widespread areas of a foot of snow, and that's those red areas. But by the time we get to Saturday morning and add Friday snowfall on top of it, you can see these pink areas. We're pushing 2 feet or more of snow in those areas, and that is a lot of snow to drop in a very short time frame, and the snowpack will not be able to handle this rapid and this big a load. To further exacerbate the rise in avalanche dangers, we're going to see a lot of drifting snow with this storm come in, and this will only add more load onto these leeward slopes, which are the same slopes that are harboring our most worrisome weak layers. These are north and east facing slopes at higher elevation, particularly in those areas that are convex rolls with a lot of thin rocky spots. And this is leading us to issue an avalanche warning for the places that are going to pick up the most snow from Thursday night through Saturday. That includes a large portion of the San Juan Mountains, the Elk Mountains, very likely the Flat Top Mountains, and the Park Range north of Steamboat. So when we have the avalanche warning in place, that means we have high avalanche danger, level 4 out of 5. We expect widespread avalanche activity with avalanches large enough to bury, injure, or kill a person. And many of these are going to run naturally just from the falling and drifting snow. So during the avalanche warning period, we simply advise that people do not travel in avalanche terrain while the warning is in place. An important sub-headline here is that even in the places that do not reach avalanche warning criteria, you may just see a lot of orange on the map, which indicates considerable avalanche danger. It's still going to be quite dangerous. We just don't expect as many natural avalanches to run, but many slopes are going to remain ripe for human-triggered avalanches. So the main takeaway as we head into this notoriously dangerous President's Day weekend is that we really have to change our mindset of how we've been approaching the backcountry from the last few weeks. We have to really dial back our terrain choices. The best way to approach this weekend and recreate safely and all this welcome powder that we're going to have is to utilize essentially low angle terrain. This means slopes less than about 30 degrees in steepness without steep slopes overhead. So it's going to be a really nice weekend to enjoy low angle powder.
You mentioned that a lot of these avalanches could be naturally triggered in some of these warning zones where the danger is a 4 out of 5. What does that mean for folks who are just driving in and around the high country this weekend?
Yeah, so in terms of avalanches, we have a team of folks in our crew that just are forecasting for avalanche activity on the highways. We work very closely with our counterparts at CDOT to really try to minimize the threat of avalanches hitting open roadways. So you may see some periodic closures for avalanche mitigation. In terms of driving conditions, it's going to be a very sporty weekend to be out on the highways. I would plan accordingly. Check cotrip.org to get current road conditions. And if you're trying to head out into the teeth of the storm, just to anticipate delays, have blankets, food, water in your car.
Yeah, certainly some slow going up there, but it is great news for the high country when it comes to getting all that fresh new powder. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brian. We will see you here next week for your first alert avalanche report.